Cowboy finds gay teen abandoned at bus. Stop on Christmas Eve. What happened? Next broke his heart on Christmas Eve. The first snowflakes of the season began to drift from a sky the color of worn steel, dusting the quiet roads of rural Montana. It was a soft, hesitant snow, the kind that promised a white Christmas but hadn't yet committed to. Blanketing the landscape, it clung to the weathered fences lining the empty highways and melted on the warm hood of a red pickup truck making its way toward the distant lights of town. Inside the truck, Mike Rivers gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles tight. A dark brown cowboy hat sat low on his brow, casting a shadow over eyes that had seen too many lonely holidays. His massive ranch, usually a place of solace, felt cavernously empty tonight. A last-minute trip for forgotten supplies was just an excuse to escape the silence of the sprawling vacant house. He was heading back, a half-empty grocery bag on the passenger seat, when a flicker of movement at a desolate bus stop caught his eye. It wasn't a bus stop that saw much traffic, just a simple wooden bench under a tin roof on the edge of town, a place where civilization began to fray into endless fields. A figure was huddled there, impossibly still against the biting wind. Mike slowed the truck, his curiosity piqued. As he drew closer, he saw it was a kid, a teenager, wearing nothing but a thin gray tank top and jeans. His arms were wrapped around his chest, not just for warmth, but as if holding himself together. He wasn't waiting for a bus. Mike knew the last one had run hours ago. He was just there, abandoned. Mike pulled the truck over, the engine rumbling in the quiet. He watched for a moment, a knot tightening in his gut. The boy's head was bowed, his shoulders shaking with silent, racking sobs. Without a second thought, Mike cut the engine and stepped out into the cold. In that moment, as the first real flakes of Christmas snow began to fall, everything changed. The cold hit Mike the moment he stepped out of the truck, a sharp, biting wind that whipped across the open plains. It carried the scent of pine and impending snow, a smell that usually brought him a sense of peace, but tonight it just felt bleak. The boy on the bench didn't look up as Mike approached, his worn boots crunching on the gravel shoulder of the road. He was maybe 17, with a lean frame that the flimsy tank top did nothing to protect from the elements. His dark hair was messy and his skin was pale, almost translucent, under the weak glow of the overhead light. "Hey kid," Mike said, his voice softer than he intended. "You all right?" The boy flinched, his head snapping up. His eyes were wide and filled with a mixture of fear and defiance, the look of a cornered animal. They were red-rimmed from crying, and a raw, hopeless pain swam in their depths. He didn't answer, just stared at Mike, his jaw tight. "Last bus left hours ago," Mike continued, keeping a careful distance. "It's Christmas Eve. You got somewhere to be." The boy finally spoke, his voice and cracked. "No." The single word was sharp, brittle, and hung in the frigid air between them. "No family. Friends." Mike pressed gently. Bitter, humorless laugh escaped the teen's lips. "Families, the reason I'm here." He hugged himself tighter, shiver running through him that had nothing to do with the cold. They found out." He swallowed hard, his gaze dropping to the frozen ground. They said they didn't raise a Sinner told me to get out, that their son died today. The words struck Mike harder than the wind. He'd seen his share of hardship, of tough breaks and bad luck, but this was a cruelty of a different kind, to be cast out by your own blood on this night of all nights. Found out what? Mike asked, though he had a sinking feeling he already knew. The boy looked up again, a flicker of challenge in his eyes. That I like boys. Mike held his gaze, his own expression unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. He didn't flinch, didn't recoil, he just nodded slowly. I see. He took a step closer. Well, that's their loss. What's your name? The teen hesitated, suspicion warring with desperation on his face. Leo. Mike, he offered in return. Look, Leo, you can't stay out here. You'll freeze to death before morning. My ranch is just a few miles down the road. You can have a warm meal, a hot shower, and a bed for the night. No strings. Leo eyed him wearily. Why would you do that? Because it's Christmas Eve, Mike said simply, and because no kid deserves to be left on the side of the road. He could see the internal struggle in Leo's eyes, the lifetime of warnings about strangers clashing with the immediate desperate need for shelter. The cold was making the decision for him. His teeth were chattering uncontrollably now. Finally, with a barely perceptible nod, Leo pushed himself to his feet. He swayed his legs unsteady, and Mike moved forward instinctively to steady him, his hand landing on the boy's icy arm. The kid felt like he was made of ice and bone. Easy there, Mike said, guiding him toward the warmth of the pickup truck. As Leo slid into the passenger seat, huddling close to the heater vents, Mike walked around to the driver's side. The silence in the cab was thick, broken only by the hum of the engine and Leo's chattering teeth. Mike turned the truck back onto the highway, away from the distant glow of town and toward the vast, dark expanse of his land. The sprawling ranch house, which had felt so empty and silent just an hour before, was about to have a guest, and neither of them knew it yet. But this quiet, broken boy was about to fill a void in Mike's life he hadn't even realized was there. The ride to the ranch was quiet, the only sounds being the swish of the wipers against the thickening snow and the blast of the heater. Leo remained huddled against the passenger door, his arms still wrapped around himself as if the warmth couldn't quite reach the cold that had settled deep in his bones. He stared out the window at the endless white fields rolling past, his reflection a pale ghost against the dark glass. Mike's ranch was vast, a sprawling territory of rolling hills and grazing land that had been in his family for generations. The main house sat at the end of a long, winding driveway, a sturdy two-story structure made of timber and stone, with a wide porch and warm light spilling from the windows. It was a home built for a family, though for the past decade it had housed only him. He pulled the truck up near the front steps and killed the engine. "We're here," he said softly. Leo didn't move at first, just continued to stare at the house as if it were an apparition. Finally, he turned to Mike, his voice barely a whisper. "You live here alone?" "Just me and a few thousand head of cattle," Mike replied with a faint smile. "Come on, let's get you inside." The warmth of the house enveloped them the moment they stepped through the door. A fire was crackling in the large stone fireplace in the living room casting a warm, flickering glow over the comfortable leather furniture and rustic decor. A tall Christmas tree stood in the corner, unadorned except for a string of white lights. Mike had put them up out of habit, a small concession to a season he no longer celebrated. There's a guest room upstairs, Mike said, shrugging off his heavy coat. First on the right. Bathrooms across the hall. Why don't you go get a hot shower? There are some clean clothes on the bed. Might be a bit big, but they'll be warm. Leo hesitated. In the entryway, looking small and out of place amidst the comfortable lived-in space, he looked down at his own worn jeans and the ridiculously thin tank top, then back at Mike. Thank you, he murmured, the words feeling inadequate. Don't mention it, Mike said gruffly. Go on, get warm. While Leo was upstairs, Mike went to the kitchen. He hadn't planned on cooking a real meal tonight, but now he found himself pulling a thick stew from the freezer and putting a pot on the stove to heat. He sliced a loaf of bread and put it in the oven to warm. The familiar motions, a welcome distraction. He could hear the shower running upstairs, a sound that was foreign in this quiet house. By the time Leo came back down, he looked like a different person. The shower had washed away the grime and exhaustion from his face, and the warm clothes, soft flannel shirt and sweatpants that were indeed too big for him, seemed to have brought some color back to his cheeks. His dark hair was damp and fell across his forehead. He stood awkwardly in the kitchen doorway, clutching the oversized sleeves of the shirt. Smells good, he said quietly. Leftover beef stew, Mike said, ladling a generous portion into a bowl. It's not fancy, but it's hot. He placed the bowl on the heavy wooden kitchen table, along with a chunk of warm bread. Sit, eat. Leo ate like a boy who hadn't seen a real meal in days, his hunger overriding his initial shyness. Mike sat across from him, nursing a cup of coffee, watching the tense lines around the kids' shoulders slowly begin to relax. So, Mike said after a while, breaking the comfortable silence, what's your plan? Leo stopped eating, the spoon hovering over his bowl. He shrugged, not meeting Mike's eyes. Don't have one, I guess. Find a shelter in the city, get a job. I turn 18 in a few months. That's a tough road for a kid on his own, Mike said, his tone gentle. I'm not a kid, Leo retorted, a flash of the earlier defiance returning. Then his expression softened and he looked down at his bowl. I don't have anywhere else to go. You can stay here, Mike heard himself say, the words coming out before he had fully thought them through. For a while, at least through the holidays, it's no trouble. Leo looked up, his eyes wide with surprise and suspicion. Why, you don't even know me. I know you're a good kid in a bad spot, Mike said, and I know what it's like to be alone on Christmas. He looked over at the undecorated tree in the other room. My wife, she passed away a few years back, loved this time of year. I haven't had the heart to do much with it since. An understanding passed between them, shared recognition of loss and loneliness that transcended their different circumstances. For the first time since he'd arrived, Leo gave Mike a small, genuine smile. I used to help. He trailed off, the smile fading. We used to decorate the tree together. Well, Mike said, standing up and taking their empty bowls to the sink. I've got a few boxes of her old ornaments in the Attic, if you're up for it, maybe you could give me a hand tomorrow. It wasn't a solution to all of Leo's problems. Not by a long shot, but it was a start. It was an offer of warmth, of safety, of a place to belong, if only for a little while, as the snow continued to fall. Outside, blanketing the ranch in a thick, silent layer of white, the big, empty house felt a little less lonely. For the first time in a long time, it felt like Christmas might be coming. After all, the next morning, the world outside was a pristine, unbroken expanse of white. The snow had fallen heavily through the night, insulating the ranch from the rest of the world and creating a profound, peaceful silence. Leo woke, slowly, disoriented by the softness of the bed and the warmth of the thick quilt. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. Then the memories of the previous night came rushing back. Bus stop, the cold, the man in the cowboy hat. He found Mike in the kitchen, already nursing a mug of coffee and staring out the window at the snow-covered landscape. A plate of scrambled eggs and bacon sat on the table. "Morning," Mike said without turning around. "Help yourself." They ate in a comfortable silence, the quiet rhythm of life on the ranch, a soothing balm to Leo's frayed nerves. After breakfast, true to his word, Mike led him up a creaky set of stairs to the attic. The air upstairs was cool and smelled of cedar and old memories. In a dusty corner sat several boxes labeled Christmas. Mike heaved one of the heavier boxes down and pried open the lid. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a collection of ornaments, each one a small, tangible piece of a life Mike had shared with his wife. There were delicate glass baubles, hand-painted wooden soldiers, and a string of tarnished silver bells. "Sarah, my wife, she collected these," Mike said, his voice thick with emotion as he picked up a fragile glass angel, one from every place we ever traveled. Leo reached into the box and pulled out a simple hand-carved wooden reindeer. He ran his thumb over its smooth surface. "My mom and I, we used to make ornaments out of dough and paint them." The memory brought a fresh wave of pain, and he quickly placed the reindeer back in the box. "I'm sorry, kid," Mike said gently. "It's okay," Leo lied, his voice barely a whisper. They worked for the next hour, carrying the boxes downstairs and carefully unwrapping each ornament. As they began to hang them on the tree, the sterile, lonely pine began to transform. With each new addition, it became a tapestry of memories, of love, of a life well lived. Leo found himself getting lost in the task, his earlier sadness replaced by a quiet focus. He hung the silver bells on a high branch and carefully placed the glass angel near the top. As they worked, a pickup truck, a different one from Mason's, came rumbling up the long driveway, its tires crunching in the fresh snow. A man in his late 50s, with a weathered face and a sheriff's badge pinned to his jacket, climbed out. "That'll be Hank," Mike said, wiping his dusty hands on his jeans. "Town sheriff, don't worry, he's a friend." Sheriff Hank came in without knocking, stamping the snow from his boots on the mat. "Mike," he said, his eyes landing on Leo, "got a call this morning. A missing persons report was filed for a kid matching this one's description, a Mr. and Mrs. Michael." Leo froze, an ornament slipping from his fingers and shattering on the hardwood floor. "My parents," he whispered, his face draining of color, they told the dispatcher you ran away, Hank continued, his gaze softening as he took in the scene, the half-decorated tree, the shattered ornament, the fear in Leo's eyes. They're lying, Leo said, his voice shaking. They kicked me out. That's what I figured, Hank said with a sigh. They didn't seem too broken up about it, seemed more concerned about what the neighbors would think. He turned to Mike. The thing is, legally, he's still a minor. They're his legal guardians. If they want him back, my hands are tied. A cold dread settled the room. The fragile peace of the morning was shattered. The thought of going back to that house, to the cold, rejecting eyes of his parents, was unbearable for Leo. They don't want me, Leo said, looking at Mike with pleading eyes. They just don't want to look bad. Mike put a steadying hand on Leo's shoulder. He looked at Hank, his expression grim. There has to be something we can do. We can call Child Protective Services, Hank suggested. Open an investigation, but it's a slow process, and in the meantime, a judge might order him back home. The hope that had begun to bloom in Leo's chest withered. It was all temporary. The warmth, the safety, the kindness, it could all be snatched away. He was just a problem to be dealt with, a legal issue to be resolved. Seeing the despair on the boy's face, Mike's jaw hardened. He had spent the last few years avoiding complications, living his life in a quiet, solitary routine, but looking at Leo, he knew that was no longer an option. This kid had been dealt a cruel hand, and for reasons Mike didn't fully understand himself, he felt a fierce, protective urge to step in. No, Mike said, his voice firm and clear, surprising even himself. He's not going back there. He looked from Hank to Leo, a resolute determination in his eyes. We'll fight it. I'll get a lawyer. Whatever it takes, he's staying here. It was a declaration, a promise for Leo, who had been told just 24 hours ago that he was unwanted, that he was nothing. Those words were a lifeline in the quiet of the ranch house, surrounded by the ghosts of Christmas past. A new, unexpected battle had just begun, and for the first time, Leo felt like he might not have to fight it alone. Days following Christmas were a tense blur of phone calls and paperwork. Mike, a man more comfortable with branding irons and fence posts, found himself navigating the bewildering world of family law. He hired the best lawyer in the county, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Clara, who immediately filed for temporary guardianship, citing parental abandonment and emotional abuse. The legal proceedings forced Leo to recount the painful details of the night he was kicked out, the hateful words, the slammed door, the chilling finality in his father's eyes. Each retelling was like reopening a wound, but with Mike quietly by his side at every meeting, it felt less like a solitary ordeal. Mike never cried, but he always listened, his steady presence a silent affirmation that Leo's pain was real and his story mattered. Meanwhile, life on the ranch went on to keep Leo's mind occupied. Mike started teaching him the rhythms of his world. He showed him how to mend a fence, how to feed the horses, how to read the sky for signs of changing weather. For Leo, a kid who had grown up in the neat, predictable suburbs, the vastness of the ranch and the raw physical work were a revelation. He learned to saddle a horse. His initial nervousness giving way to a quiet confidence as he rode alongside Mike. Across the snow-dusted fields, the work was hard, but it was honest, and at the end of each day, the exhaustion in his muscles was a welcome, grounding sensation. One afternoon while they were in the stables, brushing down the horses, Leo finally asked the question that had been weighing on him. Why are you doing all this, Mike? The lawyers. The fight, it's a lot. Mike paused, leaning against the stall, his gaze distant. A long time ago, when I was not much older than you, my own father and I had a falling out. It was bad. I left home angry and proud and didn't speak to him for years. He sighed, the memory still carrying a heavy weight. By the time I was ready to swallow my pride and go back, it was too late. He was gone. He looked at Leo, his eyes clear and direct. I learned the hard way that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up. It's about who stays. Your parents, they failed you. Leo, I won't. The simple, unvarnished truth of his words settled deep in Leo's soul. It wasn't pity, it was something more profound, a kinship born of shared wounds and a mutual understanding of what it meant to be alone. The court date was set for the second week of January. The courtroom was small and sterile, the air thick with an uncomfortable tension. Leo's parents were there, sitting stiffly with their lawyer. They wouldn't look at him. They weren't fighting for their son. They were fighting to maintain the facade of a perfect family. Their lawyer painted a picture of a troubled, rebellious teen who had run away after a simple disagreement. He argued that they were worried, sick, and just wanted their son home. Then it was Clara's turn. She didn't rely on dramatics. She simply presented the facts. The sheriff's report from Christmas Eve, a testimony from a school counselor Leo had confided in about the growing tension at home, and a sworn affidavit from Leo himself. But the most powerful moment came when the judge, a stern but fair woman, addressed Leo directly. Son, she said, her voice softening, forget the legal arguments for a moment. I want you to tell me, in your own words, where you want to be. Leo stood up, his hands trembling slightly. He looked at his parents, at their cold, unforgiving faces. Then he looked at Mike, who gave him a small, encouraging nod. I want to be somewhere. I'm not a mistake, Leo said, his voice quiet but steady. I want to be with Mike at the ranch. He makes me feel safe. He didn't have to help me, but he did. He stayed. The judge looked from Leo to his parents, then down at the papers in front of her. She was silent for a long time. Finally, she looked up. Her decision made. Temporary guardianship is granted to Mr. Mike Rivers, she announced, her voice ringing with finality. Mr. and Mrs. Michael, your parental rights are suspended pending a full investigation and mandatory family counseling, which, I might add, you should have sought long ago. A wave of relief so powerful it almost buckled Leo's knees, washed over him. It was over. The fight was won. As they left the courtroom, his parents scurried away without a backward glance. Outside, the January air was crisp and cold, but the sun was shining brightly. Mike put a hand on Leo's shoulder, rare smile gracing his features. Let's go home, he said, and for the first time, as they got into the red pickup truck and drove back toward the sprawling ranch, Leo felt like that was exactly what he was doing. He was going Home, the seasons on the ranch turned, slowly, each one bringing its own kind of healing. The harsh white of winter gave way to the soft greens of spring, and with it, a sense of new life bloomed not just in the pastures, but in the quiet corners of the ranch house. Leo finished his senior year of high school with Mike driving him to and from the bus stop each day, the very same one where their journey had begun. It no longer looked like a place of abandonment, but a symbol of a new beginning. Leo graduated with honors, and Mike was there in the audience, looking out of place in his good boots and clean hat, but beaming with a pride that was fierce and undeniable. The piece of paper Leo held in his hand wasn't just a diploma, it was a testament to his own resilience and a tribute to the man who had given him the stability to achieve it. They settled into a comfortable routine, a quiet partnership built on mutual respect and an unspoken understanding. They were an unconventional family, a solitary cowboy and a gay teen who had been cast aside. But in the vast, open spaces of Montana, they had found their own definition of home. It wasn't about bloodlines or legal documents, it was in the shared meals at the kitchen table, the long rides across the prairie, the easy silence that filled the evenings as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. One warm evening in late summer, they were out fixing a stretch of fence on the far side of the property. The work was done, and they sat on the tailgate of the truck, sharing a thermos of water as the day cooled around them. "I've been thinking," Leo said, breaking the silence, "about college. There's a good agricultural program at the state university." Mike turned to look at him, a complex mix of pride and sadness. His eyes, "That's great, kid, you do well. I was thinking I could study ranch management," Leo continued, his gaze fixed on the distant mountains. "Maybe if you'd have me, I could come back here, help you run this place." The offer hung in the air between them, heavy with everything that had been left unsaid for months. It wasn't just about a job or career path, it was about putting down roots, it was about a future. Mike was quiet for a long time, and for a moment, Leo felt a familiar pang of fear, the old insecurity that he was asking for too much. Finally, Mike cleared his throat, his voice rough with emotion. "Leo," he said, turning to face him fully, "this ranch, it's not just land and cattle, it's a legacy, and I haven't had anyone to pass it on to." He looked out at the sprawling fields, his fields. "There's nothing I'd want more than for you to come back. This place, it's your home now if you want it." A slow smile spread across Leo's face, bright and genuine, the last remnants of the scared, broken boy at the bus stop seemed to finally melt away, replaced by the quiet confidence of a young man who knew where he belonged. That night, as they drove back to the house, the stars began to emerge in the vast dark sky, a brilliant, endless canopy. The little Christmas tree from months ago was long gone, but the spirit of that season, the spirit of finding light in the darkness, of offering shelter from the storm, had remained. It had taken root in the sturdy foundation of the old ranch house, and in the hearts of the two unlikely souls who lived there. They were no longer just a man and a boy, they were a family, and under the watchful gaze of the Montana stars, they were finally Truly, thanks for watching.